Oh, my dog, hey.
Oh, my dog, hello.
We're back.
Back again.
And we're doing something a little different today.
We are so jazzed.
We've been talking about this for
2 weeks now.
And we're very excited. And we have very special guests, Doug and Jamie Brincks. Is that right?
Correct.
Nice. Okay. Well, how did we find these guys?
So, if you guys remember in our last mini episode, we were talking about cloning, and that kind of got off on a side quest about
my love for weird taxidermy.
Dogs, and it was that episode, right?
One of the last two. Yeah.
So anyway, we were like, okay, we have to talk to a taxidermist about this. It has to happen. And so the next day I Googled taxidermist in Iowa, and the top guy, I looked at his website, wasn't real impressed. And then the next guy, I was like, this might work. He had all these like awards and stuff. And so I was Facebook stalking him, and one of our fosters was a mutual friend. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wait a minute.
Natasha, how do you know this person? And is he cool? And she was like, yeah, he just adopted Butterball, or Butters, one of the doodle puppies.
Oh.
And I said, well, do you think he would, do a podcast with us? And anyway, short story long, they introduced us to Jamie, and I gave her a call and said, this is what we're doing. This is what we want to talk about. Would you be willing to do a podcast with us? Which she reluctantly said, sure. And so here we are.
And I have seen, we've got more questions than you're ever going to want to answer, so we probably won't get to all of them. But I have seen a picture of a boxer, I believe, that you guys did. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
This one?
It's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one. Is it Dro? Is it Dro?
It is.
Dro was his name?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. And so then we really spiraled. I was like, how many shelves am I going to need in my house to make this happen?
It's cheaper than cloning, that's for sure.
It is cheaper than cloning. We found that out last week. But tell us a little bit about, who you are, how you got into this, and then who you are, how you got into this.
And how long have you been doing it?
Yeah.
You go first, Jamie.
Okay. I started in 1999. And I did not know that I was going to be starting in 1999. My art teacher actually called me and asked if I needed a job. And at the time, I guess I could. And it was the summer. So I thought it was really weird that my art teacher would call me. So he said that there's a taxidermy shop. And I'm like, oh, I'm not into the dead animal thing. And he said, no, you need the chandeliers. You're not going to be touching the dead animals. I'm like, oh, well, that's not bad. Where is it? And he told me, and lo and behold, we used to go bowling as kids, and every Saturday, we would go across the street to the dead animal store because it was intriguing. And turned out that was my calling. Started in 1999, and I have been doing it ever since. Everything that I could get my hands on, I was pretty much doing, as long as it was legal. And then we found out about, or not we, but I found out about a taxidermy auction in Missouri and ended up going there a lot and selling all of my extra pieces, and met Doug there. And we were both going there for 10 years before we met each other, and then I stopped at my job.
Love it.
And we ended up getting married, and now we have our own studio. So
here we are.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, Doug.
So my story a little shorter. Basically going to college and driving around when I should have been in college. And there was a taxidermy school. And so me and my buddy stopped in, and I got a brochure. And I decided to go that route, taxidermy school, and then did that. It was just a 6-week school, and called every taxidermist in Iowa begging for a job. And one finally said yes. So I kind of got my foot in the door there, and yeah, worked for a few other taxidermists and met Jamie, and here we are.
Rest is
Excellent.
history.
I was just gonna ask, is there like a school for this, or is it
There
do
is.
you learn on the job, or
Yeah, there's
do you have to have a license or something?
There's a few schools around. I learned on the job. I didn't have any schooling per se, and Doug went to school. And now
Okay.
I go to schools. So,
well, workshops.
yeah,
Yeah.
workshop.
Help teach.
Like once
Yeah.
you get to a certain point, you can always get better. So if you are stuck in a rut and you don't know what else to do, you pay somebody who's better than you, and they teach you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Master class in taxidermy.
Right.
I like it.
so speaking, some of the lingo I want to make sure that we're using the right lingo. So when you are talking about an animal that is preserved, what's the right word for that? Like taxidermied isn't a word, is it?
That's what we use.
I believe it is.
Oh, that is a word. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great,
I like it.
Um,
We weren't
excellent.
sure.
yeah, we use the
Okay.
word mounted, I guess.
Preserved.
People call it stuffed. There's really
That's what I was. I was
Yeah.
like, well, that's what I said here. Stuffed. Is that the right word?
Nice. Well, so we obviously want to really dive into the art of preserving or taxidermying, I guess, a pet. But tell what's most common, right? You're doing mostly like deer. Like, what's the most common one you guys do? Type of animal.
Right now, we are deep in African safaris. And we are so filled up with African safaris that we cannot take in any deer. But yeah, usually it's deer and ducks and geese and fish. We do not do fish anymore. We used to, but I got out of that. We still do birds and we still do deer. But at this moment, we have a backlog of African safaris that we're working on. We have a crocodile on the floor right now, a zebra in front of us. There's so many critters that are ahead of everybody that we don't feel it's fair to take in extra pieces until we're caught up. And we also have a dog.
Yeah, Kara sent off a squirrel to be taxidermied 2 years ago and
I've been waiting.
hasn't heard back.
I've already told this story on the podcast, but I have to share. So I had a dog that was my husband's best friend, beloved dog, right? And he got cancer, and so we wanted to give him a little bit longer, and so we gave him medicine, and he got on steroids to make him feel better, And we joked that he kind of became super pup, and he had spent 9 years of his life chasing a squirrel, and he never caught it. And after he got on steroids, he went out there and he killed that squirrel.
Oh my.
And my husband called and he said, Jasper got the squirrel. And I said, go get it. He's like, what? Go get the body. I want it stuffed, like bad. Like it's going to be in our living room. And it's still at the taxidermy shop. It's been like 3 years. I'm dying. I need it on my wall.
I think that squirrel got lost.
I know. I think it's frozen somewhere. I'll never see it again.
So, to that end, I do have a question. If somebody were to bring an animal to be stuffed or mounted or whatever, like a squirrel or a dog or whatever, what's the process for that after the animal dies? Do you need to freeze them? What do you do with it? What do I do between death and getting it to you?
Every single body has the bacteria in it that pretty much dissolves the body and decomposes it. And the first thing to go is the hair or the feathers. So right when that animal dies, it's warm. That bacteria is just going nuts. And it is, I'd say you have a day, if that. It depends on how hot or cold it is. But
Yeah.
The best thing to do is freeze it right away, immediately, and not wrapped up in blankets, because blankets are insulating the animal, even though a lot of people think, well, they want to make their pet comfortable. I'm giving a pet example since that's what we're
Sure.
here for. But that is actually slowing down the freezing process. And that's not good. So after the
top of the popsicles is what we're finding out. Just right in there. We like it. Okay.
Don't bury the ice cream.
Frozen right away. Yeah.
Yep. Get it cool as fast.
Okay. Nice.
And so then,
And then do you guys have storage, or, so if I wanted you, like if I had that squirrel and I would have brought it to you, do you want it right then and there? Or do you want me to store it until you have time to work on it? Like, what's the better option for you guys?
You could do either. You could freeze it yourself. I would say that's probably the best option. So it gets in the freezer faster.
Do you guys just have like giant commercial freezers at your place?
No, we just have normal freezers.
so everything is skinned out. So
Oh,
could take a life-size bear, for instance, and depending on how big the bear is, if you took 2 high-V plastic bags, put them together, we could fit an entire bear in it.
oh shit.
Oh,
So
Okay.
the
smaller one.
so the
It's like taking your coat off and smashing it into a bag, and that's basically the skin. They don't take up a large amount of room. So.
Got you. So all the insides are
Gone.
eventually scraped out, and
Yeah.
you're just left with the,
Because you don't need that. You
Right.
just need the
because they're gonna put that what is that you're holding?
This is
form.
This
The
is going to be a pug. A dog.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
So did you mold that, or
yes.
Yeah. So this is started from scratch. And what we do,
Wow.
so we start from its carcass basically, and we make a mold of its carcass. And this is just kind of the beginnings of what this dog is going to be, but it'll be laying on the floor, kind of looking back.
And his tail,
what is that made out of? Is that foam or clay or what?
It's a little bit of everything. There's Bondo, foam,
paper mache,
paper mache.
heavy duty wires.
Yep, there's wires in all the legs so they don't break. String. We use string for the tail to make the tail.
It has a
Okay.
wire in it, and then we need to give the tail girth, but we still need to be able to bend it. So the string allows us to build it up, stays there, and then we can bend it, and then we coat it with clay and then adhesive so the hide sticks to it.
Yeah, because you're going to have to curl that bad boy up for
Yep.
a pug.
Yeah,
But it's easier to put it on when it's straight and then curl.
and it bends. You can
Yeah.
bend it wherever you want once you put the tail on. So pretty fun stuff.
Okay, so now once you hand that finished product,
Yeah,
sorry,
animal,
I'm
I don't know,
like
yeah.
looking for the right word.
Yeah.
Once you give that back to the owner, is the owner then able to bend the tail, or is it like, do you eventually cement it somehow?
We would advise not to, just because the skin will dry. When we put the skin on, it's wet, so it'll dry. And if you bend that skin too much, it'll crack eventually.
Okay.
Yep.
Got you. Now, what about the ears? Do the ears stay floppy, or
Nope.
They're hard.
They're going to be filled. So when we work on an animal, we don't really scrape out the insides. We actually just take the skin off of everything. So the eyelashes are true.
Yeah.
The nose pad is true, but the tongue is now staying inside the body. And the tail has a bone in it, so we actually strip the skin off the tail. You'll have just this little bony tail left. So then we know how big the tail was, and we take all these specific measurements to make sure that they are correct. But when we have the real carcass, then we can actually cast that animal and make it exactly how it was because we have the animal. We don't do
Right.
that for every animal. For instance, a zebra. We would buy a zebra form and then take our measurements of the skin because we're not going to have the true measurements, but the skin tells you exactly where it needs to go. So we might have to cut the nose off of the zebra, make it longer. We just add foam, or we could cut the zebra's nose off, the bridge of the nose, take a section out and make it shorter, or a narrower face doing the same thing. But a dog or a cat, or a parrot is completely different in terms of if you have a deer and somebody hunted a deer, then they don't know what that deer looked like for
Reference.
reference.
Right.
They know that this looks
Right.
like a really nice white-tailed deer. It's a great representation of that species. But now if we got the ears off a little bit or the eye color wrong, the customer's never going to be able to say, hey, that's not how my deer looked. Now,
Right.
dog, somebody looked at their dog for 10 years or longer, and that is a special piece to work on. One, you can't buy a form. We have to make a form. All the rolls and wrinkles on the dog, we have to recreate it, and in the right spots. The eye color needs to be exact. The way the dog held his eyelids has to be exact. The ears, like you mentioned, the ears are turned inside out. The toes are opened up and turned inside out. The lips are turned inside out. And around the eyes is turned inside out. The whole animal has to be free of any connective tissue or flesh or fat. Then it gets salted. After it's salted, then it dries. It turns into like a potato chip. And before it completely dries, we fold it up so it's easier to ship. Then we send it to the tannery. After it's at the tannery, it's going to be made into leather. And then once they're done with it, it gets shipped back to us. Then we have to apply the skin over the form. And anywhere we made an incision, down the legs, along the belly, that all needs to be sewn up. And when we sew them up, we're making almost 1/8 of an inch stitch and keeping the hair out of it in order to make that stitch invisible. So when a person would go over and pet the dog, the fur is going to feel the same, but you're really going to be feeling the mannequin underneath, so it would be hard.
Right.
It won't be squishy. Yeah.
That's so much work. I can't. And how long, from nose to tail, if you will, does it take to stuff a dog? Let's say somebody brings one in, you got to do the form, you got to send it away, all that kind of stuff. Like, how long does that take?
That's a good question. This particular dog so far, I probably have 3 days into making this. Just because I made a couple mistakes, like in the beginning. I used a couple materials that I didn't really know how they'd react, and it didn't work out, so I had to redo a few things. But I would say probably a week we'll have into this dog total.
And then,
But there's so many steps it takes.
And you're working on other things.
Yeah,
in
you're working
between
on
while
other
you're waiting
projects.
for all the people.
Yeah, there's so many steps that are with this. It's hard to keep track of your time.
we probably should keep track of our time.
Yeah.
But there's the reason that many taxidermists don't want to take this project on is, one, it's not really, it's a memorial more so than a trophy. And it's usually a very painful interaction with your customer instead of a joyful one for the most part.
Right.
But people are excited to get their pet back, but you really hope that you got the expression correct.
How do you do the eye color?
Pictures.
Or do you buy that?
Pictures, reference pictures.
I mean, how do you make it?
We usually, for a dog, we kind of go off of, I'll buy a whole bunch of different colored brown eyes that are already pre-made from our supply company. And they're truly meant for like a wild boar or a bear. And if I can't get something to match, then there's actually a company that you can send pictures to and they will color match it. But usually dog eyes are really
Never have known that. That's crazy.
Have you seen those videos for the glass eyes for people where they they're all hand painted porcelain?
Yeah.
The whole thing.
And that's
I wonder
wild.
what that was.
they're all hand painted. Yep.
Holy cow.
So then before we take the animal apart, we make a death cast of them, and this is a death cast. So before the dog was taken apart, we actually made a mold of his face. So now I have a great representation of how thick were his jowls, how wide was his face, how did his forehead form, where the divots are and where it's raised up. And now I have his face in my hands, because when you skin the dog out, the skin lets out, and it's a lot to work with. It's almost like taking a basketball amount of skin and trying to put it on a baseball size skin, when it did come off of a small thing, but now it's really big. There's a lot of skin to play with.
This is pretty rough.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a rough.
Get it?
Ha, it's rough.
He's been waiting this whole time, just remaining silent. You are my kind of guy.
I thought about
like
that
this.
like 10 minutes ago.
So after you return the dog back to the owner, what does the owner have to do with the dog, like as far as maintenance? Like, do you dust it? Do you vacuum it every once in a while? You just,
give it a brushing? What do you do?
I don't know.
I would just say blow it off with a hairdryer. Keep the dust off of it. You really don't have to do too much. I mean, the worst they'll get is dusty. So
Okay.
Yeah.
yep.
I don't know if there was like
I haven't dusted my
spray
armadillo
it every now and again, or
That's hard to dust.
what?
My armadillo.
Yeah, Kara has a taxidermied armadillo.
Yeah,
Take
on
that-
my bookshelf.
Take your armadillo outside and give him a good blast of pressured air, like out of that air compressor.
All under its little scaly thing.
That'll clean him right up.
Yep.
A nice big
Perfect.
blast of air.
I like it. Okay.
So Kara was showing me earlier, when we were preparing for this podcast. What did you call it?
It's soft mounted taxidermy. Do you ever do this where they kind of articulate, the legs can bend, things like that, and it's more of a soft body? Have you ever done that? And what's the pros and cons of that?
I've never done it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've done wrapped bodies before, but the way that I was taught was the skin was raw still, and it had a dry preserve put on it. So I made a form from the inside out, pretty much, and I was able to bend the muscles and everything because the bones were still in it, and there was a wrapped body that was soft, but it doesn't say soft because the skin, once it dries, it turns into like a potato chip. They're using a tanned hide and making a metal armature in there so they can flex it. I'm not very familiar with it.
Yeah, but it's like like a wire form and then like some fluff around it, basically.
And
they look kind of
it's not really correct, but
no, they look kind of like a stuffed animal that's like not right, but I don't know.
And I'm sure they take about the same amount of time to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, because you have to account for the fact that somebody's going to be moving it around too. So, like, you wouldn't want anything too tight around the form.
Right. Then it would split that leather. Yep.
Yeah. You said something earlier about the tongue. So, can you do it with their tongue hanging out, or like they're panting, or what do you do with that?
So we can actually cast the tongue, and we can actually pour a resin that is the same color as the tongue. So in the end, it would be a plastic tongue, but it would look so realistic that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, and it would be a true cast of that dog's tongue. Yep.
We have a lot of toothless dogs between us. And so this is a real concern. We need to make sure that, like, if the tongue could be out, it's important.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, well, this has been incredible. So many questions.
Well, one thing we were talking about, so you guys are so booked out, you've got so much going on, you're, taxidermying all of Africa in Iowa. But let's say
hypothetically
speaking, let's say I have 10-year-old dog, and I could just get on a waiting list, and I know that this dog is going to die in like 5 years, or hopefully, but maybe, somewhere in that range. Could I just be like, hey, it's coming? I want to do this, but my dog is like still living, but my armadillo needs a
Just
friend
pop
on
him
the
in the
shelf.
freezer.
After he dies. For how long am I gonna have to wait? I'm not a good waiter.
That's true.
Except on squirrels.
No, I think that squirrel is gone forever. I don't think I'll ever see it again.
Oh,
Are there taxidermists that just do companion animals, or is that like a very, very niche situation?
I don't really know. I think there are a few companies that actually do just pets, and
I think they freeze dry most of them.
there is an option.
Oh yeah,
we
we were going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about this freeze drying business? Because I actually have a freeze dryer, so
Oh, you do.
I might be able to help you out, Kara.
If I need it back.
I've never freeze dried anything. I've seen it. That's about as far as my knowledge goes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with it either. As far as I know, I have a freeze-dried squirrel, and I believe that they opened up the abdomen, removed those, and then they filled it, sewed it up. But then I think that they injected it with something before they propped him up in the freezer, maybe ran some wires to hold the shape, but they're hidden and you can't really see them. So the eyes aren't going to be real. The teeth are still going to be in there. The tongue will still be in there, as far as I know. The muscles in the legs are still going to be there. And then they put it in the freezer, freeze dryer, and it has like a vacuum or a pressure. I'm not very familiar with it, but it's forcefully blowing air across it to dry it out like a freezer burned steak, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it does take a while because it has to dry out to a certain percentage, and then they can take it out, and now the piece is done. But as far as like how it really goes down, I think I'm close, but don't quote me.
Aren't freeze dried Skittles like bigger than regular
Yeah, they
Skittles?
poof up. That's why you got to take the
they
guts
poof
out
up.
before you freeze dry.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's a chamber that there's a vacuum seal on the
Okay.
chamber.
Yeah, you don't want your pet being twice the size as what
Well,
it was
it
originally.
does that on. It depends on the sugar content.
Yeah. So if
So
you have
you'd be fine. But Google here says that the time it takes to freeze dry an animal depends on its size, but it can take several months. For example, a small dog or cat might take 3 to 4 months. You'd have to do it in stages, I'm sure.
That makes Doug's wait time not sound so bad.
yeah, that's nice. You're oh my
gosh.
Okay. Wow, I had another question too I want to ask before you got out of here, but I got to remind myself what it was.
Can I ask one?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Earlier, you said, Jamie, that you try to do all the taxidermy legally. Is there illegal taxidermy?
There is illegal taxidermy.
I caught that too.
The so owls, birds of prey, songbirds, those are all protected. And we do get a call every once in a while that, hey, I found this owl. Can you do it for me? We cannot do them for anybody unless they are going to a learning institution. So no matter if you found it or not, it has to go where the public gets to view it. So you can't just sneak an owl.
Any owl?
Any owl, any hawk, any cardinal, blue jay, anything, any songbirds.
Why is that?
Oh,
Do we know?
Because they don't want people hunting.
They don't want people
Right.
shooting robins, and like starlings and sparrows you can shoot because they're not native.
You could
So
Pharaoh diorama if you wanted to.
Did you say you did a parrot earlier?
yeah,
you know,
yep.
Interesting.
We've done.
That's a really long wait. You gotta wait for the parrot to die.
it'll take a while.
I have a parrot
Forever.
now, actually. I've done a ferret. I've done hamsters. I did a bulldog, boxer. I've done horses.
Now, when you say you've done horses, is it like a deer where you just do the like the head mount, or did you do the entire body?
It's more of a head mount, but it's like an elongated shoulder. We call it a wall pedestal. So it has a little bit more elegance to it. It's not just a horse head sticking out of a wall. It actually hangs on the shoulder. It's really pretty.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the one that you have up in your studio that I saw, it was beautiful.
Thank
But,
you.
okay, I remembered my question, and it's not about elegance. Okay. So I really enjoy the deep parts of the web where we look into like, okay, we're gonna take taxidermy, but we're gonna like kind of make it fun. And so I, in my lifetime, have owned some strange taxidermy. And I had a couple of squirrels in a canoe that were like going down the river.
Huh?
And then I currently have a little shadow box that has a mouse painting on an easel. So do you ever have like weirdos that are like, hey, could you make my cat look like Puss in Boots? Like anything like that? Or
Oh,
are
yeah.
you just like doing straight up like good looking animals,
We used to do.
We used to do a lot of the novelty animals. We really got away from that just because.
You got too good for it.
Well,
All your stuff is so
the pay is way better on like African safaris, and
oh sure.
we don't have to sell. We don't have to try to sell anything. It's already people are bringing it to us like a squirrel in a canoe. We have to try to sell it, and
not very
Really?
hard.
I can't imagine
it's
that.
not real hard.
Oh my gosh. Well, if I ever get that frozen squirrel back, I will just put it in my freezer and wait for however many years it takes for you guys to do it so I can actually have it on my wall someday because I'm ready. I gotta hunt it down. Again,
my
it's already been
gosh.
hunted once by my dog.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you guys think we should know?
I think back to the freeze drying thing. I think like you can get way more detail on the method that we're doing. We use a lot of clay.
Oh.
Freeze drying, and you're pretty limited to what's underneath. When an animal dies, it loses a lot of muscle tone and just detail.
Yeah, just to be clear to all of our listeners, Holly is not freeze drying pets in her freeze dryer or any other animal for that matter.
Yeah.
So keep buying your Skittles from me. There will be no pet hair.
No, I agree. I know someone that had some their dogs freeze dried, and they were just, it was like the essence of the dog, but it wasn't quite right. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm with you.
Excellent.
Okay.
And to give our viewers just a kind of a ideal cost scenario, I mean ballpark. I know
So
is it like $10,000 or is it
That sounds
like $100?
I like the way she thinks.
Yeah.
you.
We used to charge by the pound. We've only done 3 dogs so far,
Right.
so we're kind of learning as we go. And every time we do a dog, we realize we did it too cheap.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's such an intricate situation.
I'll tell you what, I do I paint dog portraits, and a lot of times it's after the dog passed away. So when you talk about the painful moment of them bringing you the pictures and bringing you the animal, but they send me the photos, and when I actually hand that painting to them and the tears come, it's a whole experience. But the value to that, I think you need to place it on it, because if someone loves their dog enough and they have an interest in having their dog preserved, I think
they're going to be willing to pay
a premium.
Yeah.
That wouldn't bother me,
Right.
And we already know it costs $50,000 to get your dog cloned, so somewhere less than that.
It is
Actually, it's $51,600.
Yeah, it's
Woo.
I think it's around $4,500.
Yeah, for that pug, it's $4,500. We're probably going to be too cheap on that too by the time we get done with our time materials, but we're learning as we go.
We really enjoy doing it. The time that we put into them to get it exactly like the pictures. We ask for videos. We ask for any pictures that they have, even if it doesn't look like something that we could use in their eyes. There's things that we pick up on of how the hair actually is wrapped around the face. The cowlicks have to go in a certain spot, and that skin, when you put it on there, it's like putting a towel on that form. Well, where does it go? Well,
Right.
the hair patterns will actually tell you exactly where they need to go. And if something's blown up too much, it will not look right. That needed to be indented, like in the collarbone, for example. So that'll tell you where it needs to be. It's a lot of work to pretty much make a sculpture of the dog and then put the dog on it and make it look right. And then, like the ears, you said, are the ears soft? Well, the ears are turned completely inside out, like a plastic Ziploc bag. And it has to be turned out all the way to the edges, because we actually will make a form and we will make it look like that cartilage and the shape that the pug's ears were in when he held his ears up and they were at like that triangle lifted up. Well, they don't just do that. A form needs to go in there. Well, they don't make pug ear liners. So we have to create that. And it has to sit correctly on the head and make the correct wrinkles that form into the ear butt and over the brows to give them that nice, cute, curious look with the big buggy eyes.
And when he's sitting on the ground, like where his skin meets the ground, you can't have space underneath the dog, you know.
It needs to be puddled.
Yeah, so the more you know or realize, like, the longer it takes.
Right.
It's a science and an art.
I'm
very impressed.
I didn't ever think about it, but there's so much talent, like artistic talent, that goes into taxidermy.
It is art. Yeah, I think so. Wow.
That's incredible.
Well, I'm going to do a really specific photo shoot of my Chihuahua of every angle.
We need it.
And I anticipate that when he dies at age 28 to 29, that you guys will still be doing this, and then I'll bring it to you. He will look a hot mess, and so I'm going to really like the taxidermy because I like when they look.
And you're going to put him in the freezer immediately.
Yeah.
Right away.
Immediately.
I'm ready. I'm ready, and
put a note on top of the freezer. Fido inside. Warning. Trigger warning.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us and taking time out of your evening and your week and all the things you do to talk to and answer all of our insane questions. So
it was fun.
We love this. Yeah, I'm glad you had fun with us because we sure had fun.
Yeah.
And
thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys. And when you're ready for another dog, you know who to call, right?
All right.
And then a live one, and we'll get the done.
Yes, a live one. She means a live one.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.